This is an advanced prototype. It features some of my favorite features as the CEO. You'll see that this one has four motors, four pump jets, just like a quadcopter. Our mission is to inject deep tech into medtech, and we think that the GI tract in the human stomach might be maybe the perfect way to begin.
Torrey Smith, welcome to the Scope Forward show. You're the co-founder and CEO of Endiatx, and I'm super excited to have this conversation.
Praveen, thank you so much.
Torrey, this story of Endiatx and the creation of the Pillbot is almost from a sci-fi movie. In fact, I did come across a video where you referenced the movie Aerospace. And I remember watching that movie the first time and being all excited about it as well. I want to listen to the backstory here. You started in aerospace engineering, and now you're flying something inside the body. So I'm really curious, and please get us started. Tell us about your background and what led up to Endiatx.
Thank you. Well, like many of us, it's science fiction and books and movies. I think there were two pivotal movies for me. One was the movie The Right Stuff about the Mercury astronauts. That really cemented in my head that I wanted to become an aerospace engineer. But then when I saw that movie, Inner Space, it just brought things into focus. And, as a child, when you see stuff like that, it enters your mind in a very straightforward way. And you just kind of imagine that that is normal. And so when I was an adult, leaving the aerospace program at Cal Poly, I had an opportunity to go into medical device. And I hadn't been taking it quite as seriously. I was super excited about experimental aircraft at the time, but a aunt of mine came down with a glioblastoma, a brain tumor, and unfortunately passed away. And around that time, I had this opportunity for medical device. And so I was fired up. I was young. I was upset with the current limitations that we have access to. And so I thought, you know what? Let's see what we can do. Let's try to take some aerospace engineering and push that into the world of medtech. And, after paying my dues in a series of startups in the Silicon Valley Bay Area in med device, I eventually found myself with an opportunity to build a team and co-found Endiatx. And so, yes, our mission is to inject deep tech into medtech. And we think that the GI tract in the human stomach might be maybe the perfect way to begin.
How did you pick GI?
Well, let's just be honest. I mean, if I'm holding in my hand Pillbot, this is an advanced prototype. It features some of my favorite features as the CEO, features that we might not be able to put into the first product clinically out in the world. You'll see that this one has four motors, four pump jets, just like a quadcopter. The robot that we're entering clinical trials with in a few weeks has three pump jets, a few limitations, a few trade-offs. But when I tell my friends that I build tiny robots and I put them inside the human body, people are going to have one of two reactions. They might say, wow, Torrey, that's amazing. That's a really cool tiny robot you're holding in your hand. Another person, just as reasonable, might say, that's not tiny, Torrey. That is a huge, scary pill you're asking me to swallow, and it's got batteries and motors. I mean, come on, this is crazy. And so the world of what's possible and the world of what's real and right now seem to have a perfect intersection right now in the human stomach. If you are able to drink a large glass of water, your stomach will temporarily become a bag of water. And it's a beautiful playground because it means we can build, even with today's technology, little swimming drones that can go and do work in the human stomach. And then I think the expectation and the hope is that if we can use the stomach as a beachhead for this new category of tiny robots swimming around in the human body, well, then we can definitely go other places. I mean, we obviously want to do the rest of the GI tract, but equally, we want to do blood vessels. We want to go in between layers of tissue. Personally, I'm hoping that we can go all the way back to the brain so that I can revisit that story with my Aunt Katie. And maybe one day we'll find ourselves chewing away on a glioblastoma for another patient. That would be a beautiful full circle moment. So for me, the humble beginnings in the human stomach are probably appropriate. And I'm just very grateful that there's a organ system there that seems to have some untapped need for more inexpensive and widely accessible screenings.
Very interesting, Tori. Did you decide to focus on GI and then start developing, or did you develop something and then, look for a use case that might be appropriate? I think what I'm trying to ask you is, what was the initial challenge that you were tackling when you got started with Endiatx?
I mean, honestly, each founding story is going to be a combination of business analysis, market research, speaking with doctors, your own instincts, reasonable, scientifically plausible reasons for starting a company. But a whole other side of most founding stories is going to be an emotional story. It's going to be a personal story. And my story and my team's is like many other team stories, where from a personal perspective, I think 3, 4 med device companies into my career, 3 of them were successful. I had nothing to complain about. But I was facing some personal challenges, just kind of depression. I felt like I was getting a little bit older, a little bit faster than I wanted to. I felt like many of the technologies that I had worked on in the traditional medical device arena really felt like incremental improvements on work that had already been done. And so when we launched Endiatx, truth be told, we didn't know what the robots were going to look like. We did know that the GI tract probably made sense to put a robot, in your tummy before you would put a robot in your brain, right? That seemed like an obvious thing. The funny thing was, though, we had no idea how we were going to make them move. We just had 30 or 32 different ideas that we had sort of sketched and prototyped: tank treads, inchworms, flagellating tails, contra-rotating corkscrews. We thought of a swimming robot. We were just trying to make robots and put them into people. And when we realized that we might have difficulty navigating the entire GI tract with one device and being sort of the ultimate end all, robot endoscope for the entire GI tract, one of our advisors, an Air Force doctor, emergency room guy, my older brother Ben, he said, Torrey, I respect that you want to do everything with your first product, but it occurs to me that if you drank a lot of water, you might be able to swim. And so the question is there any value in an active real-time endoscopy experience that is remote in the human stomach? And so at that point, we decided to go from the emotional side to the market research side and actually do some business analytics. And we were blown away. We were astounded at how many people are having difficulty accessing a basic procedure like an upper endoscopy. So that's a very long-winded answer, but my intent with that is to show a prospective founder that your raw emotions are probably necessary. And if you combine that with some market research, you may very well come up with something worth launching a company on. But if you only focus on market research and the business case, you might not have the emotional horsepower to make it through all the difficult times that come with launching a company. And so my advice to founding teams would not be to ignore the raw emotional side.
Going to the technology itself, Tori, describe what it does today.
What we are creating is a swimming robot drone that is controllable in 3 dimensions in a stomach where the owner of said stomach has been willing to skip their breakfast and drink a large glass of water. And this drone then uses a couple of pump jets. Right now, we're using 3 pump jets, which does pretty good XYZ. And what we offer to the doctor is a real-time live video, and they can control it 3-dimensionally using either a touchscreen on their phone, which is kind of a nice 21st century interface, or they can do it like we do it right now, which is with game controllers. You could just get any game controller you might be familiar with. And basically, the intent is to offer to a gastroenterologist the moving tip of their endoscope that is very effective in the stomach, with the hope that gastroscopy that we're giving access in a remote setting, either decoupled entirely from the hospital or in just a lower barrier to entry setting. But a quick look around in the human stomach seems to be a pretty exciting possibility in the world of patients and doctors.
So, Tori, what are the challenges that you're facing right now?
We're about to turn 5 years old. And in those 5 years, we've worked very aggressively to de-risk the tech stack. I'm very, very proud to say, as of today, the technical hurdles have been overcome. And you're going to see us entering clinical trials in a few weeks with the first version of this device that we think has minimum viable product candidacy. So, with technical challenges largely addressed, I'd be curious to hear about other kinds of challenges you might be curious about.
I want to delve a little bit about the technical challenges itself. Like, so patients you've tested, I'm assuming you've tested it inside of several human bodies. Like, so what was the testing like? So I can think of multiple things here, right? Like, so one is I'm trying to visualize a typical gastroenterologist trying to navigate this. It requires a certain tactile sense, with their fingers using a gaming device. Not everybody is used to it. And to be able to navigate this itself is like a skill that needs to be learned. I can see that as one potential challenge. The other thing is how the drone itself, calling it a drone now, when it's navigating inside the gut is not easy. It's not like, a straightforward pathway. There is a fair bit of maneuvering that needs to be done. And knowing what I know about GI patients and why gastroenterologists are called to emergency, people put all kinds of things inside their gut. And this, while I can understand how the drone might be able to swim when it's clean water, or like when the gut is filled with a liquid, I'm struggling to see whether that's going to be the real world case. Like, so I'm curious to get your reflections on this.
I've been taking notes, and my intent is to hopefully partially answer your questions. You have an extremely important observation. How are we going to swim through the small bowel, the gut, all those kinked garden hose morphologies? The simple answer is we're not going to. Once we enter the gut, our job as a stomach robot is done. We shut that robot down. What we do is we analyze endoscopy procedures case by case and try to understand other populations of endoscopy procedures that we could be relevant to. So, for example, if we look at a colonoscopy, that's a market we'll explore later, but that's not our first market. And so we're not going to try to do colonoscopies with Pillbot at first. If we look at something kind of scary like a double balloon enteroscopy, that's a thing where you're looking at the whole length of the small bowel. That's a place where a pill camera just passively moving under peristalsis is superior to just about anything else. Pill cameras are great. So we move to the upper GI and we ask ourselves, do we have value in upper GI? That's where things get a little bit better for Pillbot. Now, on the esophageal transit from swallow to your stomach, we're only going to be a one-way device. And that means not better than an endoscope, but maybe good enough for a decent fraction of patients when you're concerned about what's going on in the esophagus. It's the stomach that is the Wild West for us. The stomach is in a bit of a shadow for most patients when you talk about easy diagnostic access. Here in the United States, when someone has a simple condition like stomach gastritis, inflammation of the stomach wall, if that patient has the very best insurance in the United States, their standard of care is probably going to force them to take 5 trips to the hospital before they get an upper endoscopy to look in their stomach. That is the specific pain point where Pillbot can offer an immediate relief. Pillbot is very inexpensive, and having swallowed 36 of them myself, we're beginning to feel that it will probably ultimately be determined to be safe and effective. That is in the future, though, right? That's post-FDA trials. But our intent is to show safety and efficacy in the human stomach as an endoscope replacement. And that's where the ability to do 3-dimensional examination in the stomach is so exciting for us. And when we start to do the math, we see something like 70 million upper endoscopies done every year. And of those 70 million, we think that Pillbot could probably be a player in the patient journey, not on all of those patients, but say, I'll bet for 25% of those patients, we could replace the EGD altogether, because I'm sure there's a big population where just the stomach is of extreme interest. But then more interesting than that is for patients who do get an EGD, we might actually be able to get them qualified for their EGD much earlier in their patient journey. And then for patients that get an EGD, we might actually be a really useful follow-up procedure to see if the drugs are taking the effect that we're hoping that they do. And so this is where we get excited, because with 70 million upper endoscopies per year, when we add up all of the extra hospital visits associated with those procedures, especially on the front end, but also on the follow-up, we see a potential to turn 100 million trips to the hospital every year into pure digital health. And that's where we start to think that even the humble beginnings of a drone swimming around in your stomach may actually have a pretty monstrous effect on the market. So we get very excited about Pillbot, but it's critical that we explain some of the limitations and why we're focused in the stomach.
Do talk about how a typical gastroenterologist would navigate.
This is central to the whole conversation. We recently were very honored to be invited to the AGA, the American Gastro Association Shark Tank in San Francisco, and we put on a good show. We won the Shark Tank. At that event, we heard an amazing speaker speak about the workplace injuries that some GIs get with their wrists manipulating endoscopes. It really speaks to the physicality of the world of the gastroenterologist and the world of the endoscope. A typical gastro is doing 10, 12, 15 or more procedures per day. And just like you say, they're inserting tubes, they're manipulating wheels, a very physically demanding experience. There's a huge amount of muscle memory. What we're offering with Pillbot is we can put a gyroscope on Pillbot. That's a chip that I'm very excited to put on one of the revisions that we're going to spin up in the next few months. And with an onboard, 6+ degree of freedom gyro, you know where you are, and you know where you've been, and you know where the doctor asked you to be. And with basic closed loop control, we can have the robot hover in place. We can have the robot do an automatic scan. We can have the robot create a 3-dimensional model of your stomach. These are all things that you can assume that any good robot swimming pill would be trying to do. So what is the interface going to be like for a GI with experience with endoscopes? Well, it's going to be a little bit different, but I would say that we hope that we can offer a relatively intuitive video game-like experience where you have a little bit of data analytics, you have a little bit of sort of like a fighter jet would have a heads-up display. I'd like to offer something similar with a Pillbot procedure where it'll say, okay, here's the fundus, pylorus is down there, this is patient lateral, this is forward, this is up and down. Just immediately give you situational awareness. As you're driving around, I think it would probably make sense to see a 3D model slowly getting painted of the stomach anatomy so that as you have your real-time view, you would also have this tangible digital product that you could take with you and you kind of see it and you'd be like, oh, I haven't even come close to looking at the back. Let me do a 180 and then paint some imagery back here. And things start to get pretty fun because imagine, hey, let's call up Tim Cook and ask for a Vision Pro. Okay, so I'm going to wear my Vision Pro right now on this call. If I'm wearing my Vision Pro and I'm a doctor and I've asked the patient to come into the clinic today to take a Pillbot, and we're just in a shirt sleeve environment and I'm showing the Pillbot to the patient. If that patient swallows Pillbot, well, we should be able to be painting holograms inside that patient seen with the spatial compute on the Vision Pro. So it's very interesting. I mean, it brings up another science fiction movie with Tom Cruise, Minority Report, from a while back, which had this beautiful visual interface to a connected environment. So it's a different world. We have been asked to consider building endoscope-like controllers for Pillbot, and we're certainly willing to give that a shot. But to finish up this talking point, we also did an experiment at Digestive Disease Week in San Diego, that was 2 years back, where we had something like 40 gastroenterologists coming through our little demo area. And all we would do when they would come in is we'd say, hi, welcome, we're so grateful to have a moment of your time, thank you. And we would take Pillbot and throw it in the fish tank and hand them an Xbox controller and not say a single thing. And the GIs, the vast majority of them picked up the controller, started playing around with the knobs and the joystick, and then realized that they were in control of the bot. And then typically in an average of 15 seconds, They had full three-dimensional control. And the feedback was not, please replace this with an endoscope controller. The feedback was, I want more resolution. I want more battery life. This is fun. I want more control authority. There was a surge and a interest and a seeming like a body of enthusiasm to go further down this path. So it's a new world out there. I think that with the data that we're going to be gathering a little bit more easily with robot pills than with endoscopes, I think we're going to be able to build up the tools in parallel to make this easy to control. But the only way we're going to be successful is if we keep our eyes open and our ears open and we listen to the feedback that these amazing doctors are giving us.
Awesome. So, Torrey, what happens next after the FDA approval? So, let's say by the end of this year, the pivotal study begins. Walk us through what's going to happen post FDA leading up to commercialization, and when do you expect to see that?
Well, I want to answer your question logically with a simple business response, and then I want to go crazy, right? So the simple, appropriate answer is if we can do all of our trials in 2024 and finish all of our paperwork and responses with FDA in 2025, let's budget an appropriate amount of time for that. Then we see the opportunity to enter the market and start selling Pillbot and actually looking around inside normal people in early 2026. That is the basic goal for Pillbot Gen 1. But if anyone is curious what our team is doing, what our ambitions drive us to, it doesn't end with Pillbot Gen 1 in the stomach. There is an immediate intent to go to Pillbot Gen 2. We would very much like to do some lab on chip. I would like to take some samples, but I don't want to get those samples out of the patient. We're only ever going deeper into the human body. There's no point to like go collect the robot from a toilet. I mean, that's gross. Let's not do that. Let's put the lab on the robot. And we're not going to be able to do 100 different biomarkers when we're first starting. We might target 2 or 3 biomarkers. But if they're clinically relevant to the anatomical regions that we're traveling in, well, maybe we could do a little bit of lightweight lab on chip and actually get into the pill surgeon. I would love to do a microsurgery. I would love to do a polypectomy. That could all be in the stomach. Now, if we're going to go down to a market twice the size of the stomach, that would be colonoscopy. Now, with colonoscopy, we lose our amazing Apple, iPhone, iOS style user engagement story because in the stomach, it's just clean and happy and fun for everyone. Meaning you're at home, you drink some water, you swallow the bot, and you get on the coolest Zoom call you've ever been on. That is amazing. That is the real exciting punch that gets Endiatx started. If we're going to do a colonoscopy, you need to go to the clinic because we're going to need to rinse out all that junk. We're going to have to fill you up with clear water so that Pillbot can swim. We'll have advantages over a normal endoscope, meaning no sedation required, no need to jam a physical tube deep into your body. More like just, get rinsed out and have a Pillbot swim around. Very cool. There's a huge number of patients we can reach with that, but it loses a little bit of the fun factor from the stomach. So it's important medicine and we will do it. But I want to go beyond the GI tract. Our intent with Endiatx has been from the very beginning to put a flag in the ground and say that we as a community are creating this new market category, microrobotics in the human body. Because what got us started here, what turns kids into aerospace engineers or doctors who then go on to make pills in the stomach. First, we get inspired, right? First, we just want to go into the human body, right? And so that is where, if we can create this market category, microrobotics in the human body, turn the world's attention to this category. That attention would be the attention of doctors, the attention of institutions, definitely the attention of patients, but also, the attention of the Discovery Channel. I mean, this is so much fun. The attention of the venture capital community, who understandably so, have for many years focused a little bit more on things like digital health, right? An app on your phone. That's a reasonable place to consider making an investment. I want to show the world that little tiny robots in the human body can do amazing work, even in a beachhead market, because our intent is to go so far beyond the stomach. I want to go to rice grain size and do brain surgery because I'm still thinking about my Aunt Katie and I can't bring her back. There's so many other people we can't bring back, but we can always go forward and we might be able to actually save someone else, right? And so my hope is that we're doing microsurgery everywhere in the body to remove cancerous tumors. More importantly, maybe to find those cancerous tumors before you would ever feel them or think to look for them. And something that dawned on me recently, I was having a philosophical conversation with my chief engineer, Quentin. He's brilliant, brilliant guy. He's got 3 degrees artificial intelligence from France. He dropped everything to join our company. Quentin and I were sitting in my office saying, blue skies, where would you go beyond surgery? And we started to realize that if you could put a swarm of microscopic robots in someone's brain, you could have the world's most powerful brain computer interface. You could have robots wrapping themselves around your optic nerves. They could be in your visual cortex. It would be a way to potentially have a conversation with an artificially intelligent being in a way that you could never do through a keyboard. How cool would it be to be able to interface with artificial intelligence directly? Because those beings might not be limited and constrained to the 3 dimensions that we live in. And imagine if you had a brilliant higher level Einstein who knew you better than anyone else knew you, willing to talk to you like a father to a son, right? That would be pretty cool. So I will say that our ambition at Endiatx has recently grown beyond microsurgery in the brain. We want to go further. And my hope is that people will see what we're doing and join us, compete with us, collaborate with us, um, because this adventure is not going to be over until we're building molecular size machines. There is an amazing handshake that can happen when the world of the biological and the world of the mechanical meet at the molecular level. That's a very interesting conversation. Probably not my area of expertise, but I would be very proud if we were contributing in a material way to advance that future. So it's a big, bold adventure we're on. And I would just say, thank goodness for the human stomach. I think that Pillbot might actually be able to really get us started. And for millions of people around the world who are frustrated with what the standard of care can do for their belly aches, I think we can do some good. There's one last thing I can share. Our head isn't completely in the clouds with brain computer interfaces. There's something tangible that we're waiting for, which is I've swallowed 36 pillbots so far, but I've saved 0 lives in this endeavor so far. And while we've been talking, every 30 or 40 seconds, someone dies of stomach cancer. And all those deaths weigh up. They start to, add up. And my hope is that someday a gastroenterologist or an oncologist is going to call us up and say, a Pillbot procedure doing a routine inspection found early stomach cancer in a young person, the kind of thing you would never do an EGD for and find. And because of the early diagnosis, we were able to actually cure that cancer. And that's when the big 0 on one of our whiteboards at work is going to get a 1. And that's kind of what I'm waiting for now. Like when 0 becomes 1, and then maybe 1 could be 100,000, that would be awesome. That's the real thing we're waiting for with Pillbot, is that we do think that Pillbot is going to save lives by being an early scout, by essentially being a time machine for the oncology community. So I can't express my gratitude deeply enough to the gastroenterology world, because this is the appropriate landscape market for what we would call tiny robots in the human body, right?
What an exciting adventure, Torrey. I have a couple of questions as we wind up our conversation. What is the funding situation for Endiatx? Are you comfortable sharing how much you've raised? Are you planning to raise more? What does that look like?
It's important for me to avoid a general solicitation, which would be directly asking viewers to invest in us. That would be inappropriate. What I'm very proud to say is that in the 5 years that Endiatx has been a startup company here in the Bay Area, we've raised just over $6 million. And I feel that going from 0 to where we are now with an overall burn of 6 million has been pretty capital efficient. We are proud to be in a 9,000 square foot facility in the San Francisco Bay Area where we have tens of thousands of pounds of amazing manufacturing equipment, from 3D printers and electronic equipment to mills and lathes, welders, plasma cutters, NASA style air compressors that are silent as they compress air. Most recently, an Arborg injection molding machine so that we can do our own injection molding. We're pretty vertically integrated at Endiatx. And so our current fundraising scenario is we're kind of leaving the seed stage behind us. And with clinical trials imminent, the Series A conversation comes on board. And that's where my team and I are trying to really get a really broad set of outreach out to the world. We're hoping to put together a round that would include institutional support, strategic support. There are family offices that are trying to have an impact, and we see a huge impact that we can make with this inexpensive technology. I mean, I'm holding $35 of parts in my hand to build a Pillbot, maybe $15 more to build the dongle. And so it's an exciting time for us. We're leaving the seed stage and certainly starting to take the next steps. Obviously, further interest is welcome. I have some pictures that I'll be happy to share that show our progress from an American football size prototype to something like a Red Bull can to the thumb size to the fingertip size. And then we had a years long journey to go from fingertip size too heavy to float to fingertip size floats neutrally. So you can do elegant three-dimensional motion. And so there's very much like a stair-step pattern of how much funding you had at the moment, what you were able to do with it, and then the appropriate investor conversations that you would have. It's a global community of people who are trying to, go on an adventure of human health to save lives. I think founders would find that the community is very warm, but if you're going to call yourself a CEO, you have to carry a very hot torch yourself. You have to do what's expected of you, and then you also have to do what's not expected of you. You sort of have to be a superposition of many different personality traits and skill sets.
Torrey, my final question, and it's customary that I ask this question on the Scope Forward show, which is your reflection on the future of gastroenterology. Now, this entire conversation has been about the future. If anything, we've been living in what I would call as a science fiction world throughout this conversation, and it's been so much fun and enlightening for me. But I want you to also reflect on your frustrations with healthcare, medicine, GI, reflecting on that and where the system is, the systemic challenges that we face right now, and reflecting on that, where do you see the world go, independent of Endiatx, right? Like, so where do you see the world go, reflecting on everything that you know about what's happening in medical robotics, in medtech, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now? How do you see this decade play out?
Well, we are very much in the corner of the hockey stick, as many would describe. Our particular company, follows a very flat growth curve and then it explodes. And here we are right at that juncture. And the same is true in the tech world and also in the med tech world when we borrow some of the buzzwords that we're hearing in the news. Artificial intelligence, what does that mean? Artificial intelligence is how Pillbot goes from being maybe 100 times more accessible, meaning you could be in the middle of sub-Saharan Africa and a nurse tech could, control a Pillbot inside your stomach. That's a pretty that's a plausible outcome, Gen 1 Pillbot. And that could easily be 100 times cheaper and more accessible than flying that person to a clinic, especially when we can build these so cheap in time. But with artificial intelligence, you get to combine all of the knowledge in the world. You get to combine it all together and train a version of a doctor that is trying their best to be like the world's best doctor for everyone, right? Imagine if you got a cold and your partner said, it's okay, the world's best cold doctor is going to treat you. You'd feel pretty special. I've heard stories where my friend had a shoulder injury. And here we are in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they tell a story on Facebook where they say, my doctor is the same doctor that treats the 49ers. And you think, wow, that's cool. I hope I could get that doctor. That's what artificial intelligence is going to try to do for us. it's going to extend the reach of human knowledge. And the interesting thing is, I very much put myself in the sort of the positive category where when I'm looking at AI and trying to understand how I feel about it, because it is a big, bold new world. But I feel very positive and warm and happy about AI because I don't see doctors getting displaced by artificial intelligence. I see doctors getting enhanced. For example, my goodness, I have a son on the way in just a few days. And I'm, very blessed to be able to have a Tesla in the family that is this super safe car. The amazing thing about the Tesla is when I'm tired, I can hit a lever and it drives for me, safer than I might drive if I was tired. It's such an amazing tool. My hope is that artificial intelligence can do all of the frustrating work, all of the tedious work. Our physicians who spend a decade becoming physicians are like scientists. They really are by the time they go through all that schooling. And I'd like to bring back the physician scientist element. I want humans expanding the cutting edge of knowledge, and then I want artificial intelligence putting it to good use. And so my thoughts for a AI-enabled pillbot would be, well, maybe in a few years, it could be on a pharmacy shelf, and someone could just go purchase it without a prescription. And many times it's fine. It gives you a little diagnostic result, and it can do good out in the world, and maybe even catch stomach cancers we wouldn't even ever think to screen for. But when it finds something new or scary or weird, that should get that same patient into an actual hospital with a real doctor months or even years or possibly decades before they would otherwise get access to that real human person. And so, to summarize, I feel that most of the crazy tech underway has to be AI enabled to be relevant in the current conversation. And I'm excited to see where we can go with micromechanical systems in the human body over the next few years, because, like I said, the stomach is just the beginning.
Tori, I'm so excited about your technology and I can't wait to see it in the real world. I can't wait to see the commercialization and seeing it across GI practices everywhere. So I wish you and your team all the best on this journey. So thank you so much for coming on the Scope Forward show.
Thank you so much. And to any viewers out there who are seeking to collaborate, we are trying to be open doors with LinkedIn or our website. If you've been willing to listen to us speak, we would be willing to listen to you speak. We'd love to hear what you're collaborating on, what you're working on, and how we might be of service to the community. Thank you so much.